against Iran because of strikes they made against Saudi Arabia?
No, I absolutely do not believe, Joe, that would be in the interest of the United States to go to war with Iran on behalf of an attack on Saudi oil infrastructure. It strikes me as a very bad idea. And the reality, Joe, is we are where we are because of what Trump has done over the last couple of years. This was the predictable consequence of pulling out of a nuclear deal that was working, of escalating the sanctions on Iran over the objections of all of our closest allies who were with us in that process, particularly the Europeans, of heaping threat upon threat on the Iranians. At the same time that we've backed an open-ended Saudi war in Yemen against the Houthis, it has killed tens of thousands of people, put millions more at risk of a famine. Inevitably, that leads to this type of escalation in the Middle East. President Trump wanted the feeling and the politics of being so-called tougher on Iran, but the results he got are much, much worse than where we were when he took office.
Ben, the president said yesterday, and you saw the clip, that the Saudis pay cash. The Saudis pay billions of dollars. In fact, when he was running for president, he said the Saudis had paid him at least $150 million in cash. That the Saudis loved his, quote, toys. Now, as president, he's saying the Saudis are giving us billions and billions of dollars and creating jobs, and suggests that that's reason enough to fight their wars for them. What's your response? I
think it's an outrageous statement, Joe. American foreign policy should not be for sale. The American military should certainly not be for sale to the highest bidder, especially someone like Mohammed bin Salman, who's been demonstrated to be a murderous dictator, killing a journalist for the Washington Post in a consulate in Turkey, while also launching this war in Yemen that has had disastrous consequences. And the reality is, Saudi Arabia is not a treaty ally of the United States. We have no obligation to come to the defense of their oil facilities. And increasingly, they are a country that should concern us in terms of their complete rejection of democratic values. And so, again, I think the American people would look at this and would not think it was a wise idea to go to war on behalf of this particular Saudi leader.
Ben, in retrospect, do you think that the Obama administration should have had a tougher stance against the Saudi intervention and war in Yemen? Do you think that the Obama administration shouldn't have sold arms? Maybe at the time you felt you had to because of the Iran nuclear deal, but that perhaps our posture has been wrong on Saudi Arabia and how we've approached them. And I would fault the Bush administration. I was a part of the Bush administration, and I would say that one of our biggest shortcomings was the position with our relationship with Saudi Arabia. And so, in retrospect, do you think that we need a wholesale reexamination of our foreign policy with respect to Saudi Arabia?
Absolutely. I think it was a mistake, looking back, for the Obama administration to provide any support for this war in Yemen that began at the end of our administration. We sought to condition that support. We withheld certain munitions at certain times when we were concerned. But clearly, under Mohammed bin Salman, who emerged as kind of the de facto leader in 2015, 2016, they have taken a dark, dark turn. What I've seen since President Trump came to office is American foreign policy in the Middle East has essentially become a Saudi wish list. You had the blockade against Qatar. You had open-ended blank check support for this effort in Yemen. You had the pullout of the Iran nuclear deal. And what we have to ask is why? And we know, as Joe pointed out, Trump tells us, well, they pay cash. And they pay cash not just for our airplanes. They pay cash at Trump properties. We don't know what Jared Kushner has been talking about with Mohammed bin Salman as it relates to the potential corruption of American foreign policy. So I do think it's time for a wholesale rethink here. If this regime in Saudi Arabia continues down the course that they're going on, more and more brutal human rights violations, more and more aggressive foreign policy, I do not believe we should be providing them with these kinds of weapons absent some change on their behalf.
So, Ben, the world is an ugly, dangerous place, as we all know, and you end up